Ireland, the Emerald Island, is the home of rich emerald green grass, the four-leaf clover, Celtic remembrances, pubs, legends, good music, and the world-famous Irish dance. The Irish island is shared by two independent countries. One is the Irish Republic, and the other is Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. The capital of the Republic is Dublin, rich with monuments and sites, and due to its fortunate location, it can be easily approached both from England and the continent. Besides the ferry port, Dublin also has a very busy airport. The atmosphere of the town evokes London and Edinburgh, but Dublin is smaller, making an overview easier. Southeast Dublin is the tourism center of the capital. Marvelous public buildings are here: Trinity College, the Bank of Ireland, the National Museum, and the National Gallery. The Georgian houses in the environs of the Merrion Square are the main attractions of Dublin. The two sites of southwest Dublin are the Christchurch and the St. Patrick's Cathedral, but the bohemian entertainment quarter of the town, Temple Bar, is also here. The busiest route of North Dublin is O'Connell Street and the shopping quarter around, where several museums and theatres are also to be found. We can find here the Jameson Whiskey Factory and the James Joyce Cultural Centre. The University of Dublin, which is named Trinity College after the Holy Trinity, was founded by Elizabeth I in 1592. The original building block encompassed a big inner courtyard, the so-called Parliament Square. In the middle of the square stands the campanile, that is, the bell tower. The 30-meter-high work of art was planned by Sir Charles Lanyon. The new buildings encircle two new courtyards, the Fellows Square and the New Square. The statues standing in the yards represent famous teachers and students: Lecky, Goldsmith, and Burke. Perhaps the most known graduate of the university was the Nobel Prize winner, Samuel Beckett. The two main sites of the college are indisputably the Old Library and the Treasury. The Old Library is 64 meters long. Its gallery hall holds more than 200,000 books and manuscripts. The oldest harp of the country, which can also be seen in the coat of arms, is exhibited here. The most valuable relic of Ireland is the Book of Kells. The marvelously decorated book contains the Latin translation of the four Gospels. It was probably made around 806 by monks escaping from the Vikings. The text, which is decorated by fine, intertwining swirls and initials and human and animal figures, can hardly be read even by specialists. Those wanting to try, however, can buy a modern-day version in the shop. Numerous beautiful old buildings have remained from the 1700s, for example the museum, the chapel, the dining hall, and the examination hall. The Berkeley Library and the Douglas Hyde Gallery are located in the modern annex on the Nassau Street side. The enormous park provides recreation, relaxation, and sport possibilities. The Irish Parliament is presently in session in the Leinster House. Originally, the Parliament was located in the building which is now the headquarters of the Irish Bank. This was the first building in Europe to be constructed for use as a parliament. The middle part was planned by Edward Lowett Pearce. After Ireland became part of Britain in 1800, the Parliament was dissolved. The Irish Bank bought the building and assigned the architect James Gandon with the transformation. It was then that the eastern portal and the arched dividing wall connecting Foster Place to the building were built. Grafton Street is one of the city shopping streets. At the beginning stands a statue of Molly Malone, who's known not only from folk songs. She was a living person who sold not only her wares, but herself as well. Even today, Grafton Street has a bohemian and vital atmosphere. Comedians, clowns, and musicians entertain customers in front of the pubs. Here stands the most fashionable department store of the city, Brown Thomas, and the most seasoned old pubs, Bewley's Oriental Cafe. There's not a famous Irish person who hasn't yet visited the 150-year-old building. Especially the big hall on the ground floor has preserved its Victorian atmosphere. The fence of the park is continuously used as a site for art exhibitions. Painters work here and sell their works of the most various styles and genres. Among the paintings, we can find a lot of landscapes of Ireland or Dublin. Here can be seen the most popular shopping center of the town, the glass-domed St. Stephen's Green Shopping Center. On the northern side of the square, on the Bow Walk, the Shelburne Hotel, the most seasoned old hotel of the city, is located, and also several clubs can be found here. The old market hall is home to a so-called second-hand market where we can also buy paintings and souvenirs. The Castle of Dublin was built in the 13th century, and it has been the symbol of the English regime for 7 centuries. This is why Robert Emmet wanted to occupy the castle in 1803, which would have given a signal to start the rebellion. But Emmet was caught and executed, his name forever linked with the Irish Liberty Movement. The oldest still standing part of the castle is the rounded Record Tower originating from 1258. In the southern annex of the upper courtyard are luxury apartments that served as residences for the viceroys named by the English. The main attraction of the castle is the throne room, with the throne presented by Oran Williams, and St. Patrick's Hall, which was the scene of meetings of the Order of Knighthood of the same name. The 9-hectare St. Stephen's Green is one of the beautiful parks of Dublin that make the city so pleasurable. It's unimaginable that it was a public pasture until 1880. From the Guinness family's generous donations, an artificial lake and fountain were built, and trees and flowers have been planted. In the music pavilion, free promenade concerts are given. Several statues of famous Dublin citizens stand among the trees of the park, among them, of course, Yeats and Joyce. The Irish gentry didn't want the British to see them as their poor relatives. Therefore, they gave London-like elegance to their capital. The chief characteristic of Georgian houses from the 18th century is a brightly colored door with a bronze knocker. The different colored entrances are unified in style and are frequent subjects for painters and photographers. The impressive building of the City Hall with its Corinthian colonnade was built at the end of the 1700s for the Stock Exchange. Sir Thomas Cooley's work was bought by the town council in 1852. Long ago, Oscar Wilde, Yeats, and Daniel O'Connell lived in the houses of Merrion Square. Oscar Wilde was born in 1854 in a noble family. He attended university first in Dublin and later in Oxford. The eccentric dandy obtained his reputation with his aphorisms, poems, and novels. His witty sayings have always been popular. At the peak of his career, he was accused of being homosexual and was sentenced to forced labor for 2 years. After his release under a pseudonym, he traveled to Paris, where he died under miserable circumstances.
See the stone set in your eyes, see the thorn twist in your side. I'll wait for you. Sleight of hand and twist of fate on a bed of...
The most famous band in Dublin is U2. The wall full of graffiti standing next to their first studio is still a place of pilgrimage for fans. Ireland is the only country with a musical instrument as its national symbol, and this is evidently not unintentional. However, ancient Irish folk music originating from Gaelic music shows English and Scottish influences, nevertheless is unique and unmistakable. During the Great Famine, when millions emigrated overseas, they took their music, ancient culture, and musical instruments with them. This immigration coincided with the heroic age of the Wild West, and the music style was born which we now know as country and western. Today, including second and third generations, 10 times more inhabitants of Irish descent live in the United States than in the mother country, and they've always been careful to preserve their language, customs, and music. Anywhere we go in Ireland, there's live music in the pubs. Not only the music is unique, but also the music instruments. Eland pipes compare to Scottish bagpipes, while the melodeon is a simpler version of the accordion. Inevitably present are the violin and the flute, and, as a retroactive influence, today there's widespread use of the banjo, an instrument originating from the American South. Irish musicality has long broken through the borders of the genre. The music of the elderly, bearded Dubliners resembles most closely folk music, but in the songs of other Irish pop and rock bands and soloists, we can also recognize the roots. Besides U2, Thin Lizzy, Enya, Sinead O'Connor, and the Cranberries have achieved genuine international acclaim. The group of four brothers called the Corrs has received greater and greater praise, and it can be assumed that we will live to see the peak of their career. The impressive building standing on the side of the Liffey River is 4 courts, designed by the Englishman James Gandon, who also created the building of the nearby Customs House. Built in 1802, the castle serves as home for 4 courts: the Chancery, the King's Bench, the Exchequer, and Common Pleas. The 6 porticos standing on Corinthian columns are ornamented by the allegorical statues of Justice and Mercy, and a copper-covered dome towers above them. The building that was bombarded during the Irish Civil War was reconstructed according to original plans in 1932. The Liffey River splits the town horizontally, dividing it into northern and southern Dublin. The most known bridge of the town, the Temple Bar, spans the river at the quarter. Originally it was called Wellington Bridge, and this was renamed to Liffey Bridge. Some call it Metal Bridge, but most call it Halfpenny Bridge because this was the bridge toll in the old times. Whatever it's called, the bridge opened in 1816. Today, this is the most photographed tourist attraction of the city. The Temple Bar Quarter is the bohemian quarter of the city, similar to Soho in London. During the 1970s, the city rented out the empty, dilapidated warehouses and workshops at a cheap rate. Young artists moved in who furnished their studio flats, shops, and workshops here. In the formerly disreputable red light district, record shops, alternative clothes shops, cheap snack bars, art galleries, and bookshops shot up everywhere like mushrooms. Temple Bar became a real entertainment quarter that is worth visiting during both the day and night. Irish dances began to be popular as early as the 17th century. In the countryside, the Sunday afternoon dances were the center of social life, where everyone tried to excel with his or her dance skills. The shows of the River Dance, or the Lord of the Dance, which combine Irish folk music and dance elements with ancient Celtic culture and some tap dance and modern choreography, conquered the whole world. Michael Flatley and his company became real traveling ambassadors of Ireland. During his young years, the most famous Irish dancer, Michael Flatley, attended dance lessons only because of the pretty girls there. His first attempts were unsuccessful, and he was marked as untalented. The boy, originating from a poor family, is today a millionaire, and perhaps he's the most known dancer-choreographer in the world, who's also a Guinness record holder in tap dance. His shows, The Lord of the Dance and The Celtic Tiger, entertain millions of audiences worldwide.
5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. That was good.
Daniel O'Connell was the first Irish parliamentary representative. The road that is today the north-south axis of the town has been named in his honor. Luke Gardiner dreamt of palaces bordered by avenues along the main street, but politics intervened. During the Easter Uprising and later in the Civil War, several palaces were destroyed. Two seasoned old hotels, the Royal Dublin and the Gresham, as well as Clary's department store, demonstrate the appearance of the street 200 years ago. At the southern end of the street stands a statue of the name giver, but several other statues also commemorate famous people here. For example, John Gray, party leader Charles Stewart Parnell, and Jim Larkin, leader of the rebellion in 1913. Ireland gave 4 literary Nobel Prize winners to the world: George Bernard Shaw, Yeats, Samuel Beckett, and Seamus Heaney. No less famous are Oscar Wilde, Jonathan Swift, and James Joyce either, and Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, was Irish as well. In Dublin, Joyce has the greatest cult, as all his writings take place here. He modeled the 50 characters of Ulysses on Dubliners, and a part of town has even been named after the protagonist, Leopold Bloom. For fans, guided tours are held visiting the scenes of the novel. The newest point of interest in O'Connell Street is the light column, which is 120 meters high and was made of stainless steel. The diameter of its foundation is 3 meters, while on top only a 10-centimeter lens reflects the light of the sun. From time immemorial, there's been a debate between the Scottish and Irish where whiskey was first produced and which is the best. Such a debate, as no debate can be based on a matter of taste, remains undecided. What's sure is that in Scotland, barley is smoked above a peat flame. For Irish whiskey, barley is exclusively dried in the open air, so it's smoother and lacks the smoke taste. Everyone should decide for himself which taste is preferred. The John Jameson distillery was in operation in the Smithfield quarter of Dublin between 1780 and 1970. Recently, an attractive tourist attraction has been created in the since-closed factory. After a short film, the whiskey distillation process is introduced during a walk around the premises. After the tour, we can taste test the different kinds of Jameson whiskeys in the bar and can buy them in the shop. In the course of centuries, it so happened that Christchurch Cathedral became the church of the British, while St. Patrick's Cathedral became that of the Irish. It's believed that the church named after Ireland's patron saint was built next to the well where the saint baptized the converted believers. This happened around 540. The Celtic stone crucifix that covered the well was found in the course of the 20th century. Today, this is exhibited in the church, in addition to several other interesting relics. On the site of the original wooden chapel, a stone house of worship was built in 1192. The major part of the current building originates from the middle of the 1200s. Archbishop Minot had the 43-meter-high tower of the 91-meter-long building repaired, and it was named after him. The steeple was added only in the 18th century. After attacks and fires, like so many other monuments in Dublin, St. Patrick's was also renovated from donations by the Guinness family. Jonathan Swift was born in 1667 in Dublin and studied in Trinity College. In 1713, he became the Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral. We probably would hardly know his name had he not dealt with literature parallel to his work in the church. His satiric book about English-Irish relations, Gulliver's Travels, however, immortalized his name. At that time, his friendship with two young ladies caused a big stir. Around the end of his life, he became deaf, and he died in 1745. His tomb and relics attract many visitors to the cathedral. His works and death mask are also exhibited here. He composed his own epitaph. His girlfriend Stella, who preceded him in death by 17 years, was buried next to him. Of course, he's not the only one buried here. The biggest tombstone is that of the Boyle family. The Prince of Cork had it built for his own family. The most famous harpist, the blind Turlough O'Carolan, and Ireland's first Prime Minister Douglas Hyde also rest in the church. A wooden door with holes is a special sight which probably would remain a mystery to everybody if there were no explanatory text next to it. The long discord between the families of Lord Kildare and Lord Ormond was closed with an armistice. We can imagine how sincere the reconciliation was if they had a hole cut into the door through which to shake hands in order to avoid looking into each other's eyes. For those who are interested in religious monuments, besides St. Patrick's and Christchurch cathedrals, it's worth having a look at St. Audion Church, the oldest medieval building of Dublin, the Whitefriar Carmelite Church, and St. Mary's Cathedral as well. Every corner of Dublin is full of parks, like St. Stephen's Green, St. Patrick's Park, King's Inn, and the Garden of Remembrance. Farther from the city centre, the largest city park of Europe can be found, Phoenix Park, and the National Botanical Garden, which is home to more than 20,000 kinds of plants. It suits the city atmosphere well that the parks and squares can also be reached by hansom cabs, and don't think that only foreign tourists choose this kind of transportation. Guinness is a Swedish, malty brown beer with soft, creamy froth. Today it enjoys almost unlimited popularity on the British Isles. In 1759, the St. James Gate Brewery had already been standing empty for 10 years. At that time, people preferred whiskey and gin, and beer was not that popular, so importing satisfied the moderate demand. Today, it's not really known what made Arthur Guinness pay an annual £45 to rent a brewery. In the beginning, ale-type light beers were made there, which did not have much success. He knew the brown porter beer, much appreciated by London porters, and he decided to make a similar brew and encourage its spread in Ireland. This idea worked brilliantly. 10 years later, he started his own export, and the triumphal march of Guinness beer still endures. Today, the formerly modest brewery is located on 26 hectares and delivers its products to 120 countries. Several famous brands belong to it, for instance Smithwick, which is especially popular in Ireland. The old building was declared a monument in 1904, and later the 6th-floor, 17,000 square meter visitors center and exhibition were built here. Even the entrance hall reminds us of a huge beer mug. From this, we enter the Hall of Basic Ingredients. Guinness uses 4 basic ingredients to produce their beer: barley, hops, brewer's yeast, and water. The water comes not from the Liffey River as people think, but from the streams of the Wicklow Mountains. The rooms of the Georgian building give us a hint about the founder and the building's age, as well as introducing the whole process of production, aided by video projectors, interactive monitors, and moving flowcharts. Barley preparation has 3 stages: peeling, germination, and roasting, then grinding in a mill. The remaining husks are removed, and the barley is infused. The mushy substance is filtered and poured into fermentation boxes. Here, the starch turns to sugar, and sweet wort is born. Hops are added to the wort in 20-ton brass cauldrons. The material is heated to a high temperature and filtered after 1.5 hours. The cold liquid goes to fermentation boxes, where part of the sugar turns to alcohol within 48 hours. In stainless steel tanks, it's aged for an additional 10 days, then finally decanted into tank wagons or metal barrels. The visit ends, of course, with some tasting, at which time we can even admire the view of Dublin in the gravity bar operating at the top. Malahide is a coastal suburb located northeast of the capital, which only livens up at the weekends. Its inhabitants commute to Dublin on weekdays and only come home for sleeping. There's only one real attraction of the otherwise pleasant coastal landscape, the Malahide Castle. The castle park is situated on 100 hectares. Visiting the building was forbidden until 1973 because the Talbot family of car-producing fame also lived here. Their ancestors built the castle in the 14th century. The romantic building has been rebuilt several times and expanded. Its circular towers offer quite a fabulous sight. In 1688, England's Catholic king James II was deposed to be succeeded by his daughter Mary and her Protestant husband William II, Prince of Orange. James recruited 25,000 French and Irish Catholics, and at Old Bridge, next to the Boyne River, encountered William's army. The army, consisting of Huguenots, Dutch, English, and Scottish, soon defeated the Catholics. James escaped to France, and in Ireland the Protestant regime started. The masters of Malahide Castle were James' followers. According to family legend, on the day of the battle, 14 were sitting around the breakfast table, but none of them returned for dinner. Understandably, in Ireland, ghost stories linked to castles are just as common as in England and Scotland. All rooms of the castle are furnished with original, or at least period furniture. The oak-beamed Great Hall is especially noteworthy. A section of the portrait gallery of the National Gallery is in operation in the castle, where we can see the portraits of several famous people. The portraits of the Talbot family are in a separate room. The castle also has its own cemetery, where not only the former landowners are buried, but in a separate plot also the servants who worked here. During the 1920s, as a hobby, the manorial engineer started building Ireland's railway stations and railway bridges in the former granary. His 240 square meter working railway has become a real attraction. But it's a special treat to those who share the hobby of model trains. Powerscourt Estate is probably the nicest garden of the country. Opposite its driveway is a golf course with beautiful greens for golf enthusiasts. The park, built by order of Richard Wingfield around 1730, is situated at the foot of the Wicklow Mountains. Wingfield's descendant, the 7th Viscount, had it expanded in the middle of the 1800s, making room for the statues and gates he had collected during his European journeys. The way to the park leads through the castle, planned by Richard Castle in Palladian style. In 1974, the building was totally gutted by fire. During its reconstruction, the Schlesinger family of sporting goods fame and the architects started a new direction. In the glass-top interior, they opened a spacious shopping center, elegant restaurants, and cafes. With this, they actually subordinated the castle itself to the park, which is the main attraction here. Two Pegasus statues guard the Mediterranean-style stairway leading up to the Italian garden. Pegasus was the heraldic animal of the Wingfield family. The mosaic of the road leading to Lake Triton was made using several tons of gravel. The statue of Triton, standing in the middle of the lake, is a copy of a Bernini work of the 17th century. Especially exotic evergreens grow well here in the park. In the pet cemetery, the Wingfield's dogs, cats, and horses are buried. On the former marshland lying a bit lower, a quiet little Japanese garden has been created. The fountain, decorated with dolphins, stands in a lake full of goldfish. The huge botanic garden also has its own nursery and greenhouses. If someone would like to buy and take home the seeds of Irish wildflowers or that of the three-leafed clover, the shamrock, he can do it here. From Powerscourt, the military road built by former English soldiers leads to the heart of the Wicklow Mountains. Not far from the Great Sugarloaf, we can glimpse the nicest waterfall of the country, the Powerscourt waterfall. The foaming water of the Dargle River falls from a height of 130 meters into a granite precipice. Going along the military road, we encounter romantic landscapes and several smaller waterfalls. The Glen McNass waterfall is especially pretty. Here are Ireland's highest situated village, Roundwood, and smallest village, Vale of Clara, consisting of only 2 houses, a church, and a school. When we're talking about European car production, besides the German, French, and Italian, we tend to forget the English. However, they produce really excellent cars, and the veteran Rolls-Royce, Jaguars, Rovers, Morris, Triumphs, and MGs are very much in demand equally in England, Scotland, and Ireland. In Castle Gardens, old-timer car events are often organized, providing lavish entertainment for those interested. On such events, we can often meet models from one brand of several generations. The cars can even be rented for weddings or larger events. Drinking isn't the only activity in Irish pubs, where we can also have a meal and become acquainted with the national cuisine at reasonable prices. Breakfast here is similar to an English one. However, porridge is inevitable, and in many places the local version of Scottish haggis is also consumed. The main meal can be fish, beef, or turkey. Trout and salmon are also very popular, but also shellfish soup and fresh oysters. A typical meal is the Dublin coddle, made of sausages, streaky bacon, potatoes, and onions, and of course, there's always fish stew. The legendary Irish stew is a soup made of mutton, onions, and potatoes, and can be enough as a one-dish meal. The Valley of the Two Lakes has some of the most fabulous scenery of the country, where sleepy mountainsides with forests surround the ancient monastery of Glendalough. The monastery was founded by St. Kevin, who was a descendant of the Leinster royal house, but refused luxurious living and became a hermit. The legends about him could fill books and are still common in Ireland. The oldest building remains are on the bank of the upper lake. The more important and more complete parts are 1.5 kilometers from here, next to the lower lake. Watchman's Hut, a round tower of 33 meters, a church, a clerical house, and a cemetery compose the elements of the monument. The specialty of the church is a small tower reminiscent of a chimney, which could be reached from inside by climbing up a ladder and which functioned as a watchtower. In the cemetery, we can see several Celtic crucifixes. The largest is named for St. Kevin, who supposedly lived between 498 and 618, meaning he was 120 years old when he died. The monastery he founded was the object of Viking attacks and later that of the English. Nevertheless, it prospered for 600 years. The majority of the buildings we can see today are not the originals from the 6th century. Most of them originate from the 8th to the 10th centuries. It's worth devoting half a day or at least 3 hours to visit the sites of Glendalough and those of the two lakes. Let's continue on to the interior of the island. The most charming small town of Central Ireland, Kilkenny, is located in a wonderful place at the bend of the Nore River. The Butler family of English-Norman origin came to power in 1390 and for 500 years ruled the city that was even a capital for a while in the Middle Ages. Houses are built of local black limestone. The Georgian facades, arcades, and the inner courtyards of the Tudor age are particular. The nicest church of the city is the St. Candace Cathedral. And even though the early Gothic-style church was robbed by Cromwell's troops, with its dignified simplicity, it's a pearl of medieval architecture even today. The landlords of the environs, the Butlers, are buried in its crypt. The church is located in the Irish town, while the public buildings are in the English town. Centuries had to pass until the city became unified and indivisible. Kilkenny is proud of its past and traditions. At the end of summer, the largest-scale cultural festival of the Republic is held here. The arcaded town hall from the 18th century with a clock tower is used by ministers even today. The historical museum of the town is situated in the Tudor-styled Roth House, which, with its substance and form, well represents the architecture of the old town. Kilkenny is an ancient brewery town. The ever-popular Smithwick originates from here, and we can try it in the pubs while listening to live music. Built in 1190, the castle was also the property of the Butlers from the 14th to the 20th century. In 1967, the increasing maintenance costs drove the family's descendants to donate the castle to the nation. The squatty medieval bastions and massive walls preserve an impressive interior. The library and dining hall with its wooden walls are beautiful. However, the most famous is the Long Gallery. On its painted ceiling, motifs from the Book of Kells can be seen. The considerable painting collection of the Butler family is exhibited here, including several family portraits painted by the most famous masters of the age. The area of the castle park was reduced during the expansion of the city, but the French garden is still impressive. Ireland has plenty of megalithic stone structures. The biggest dolmen is Browns Hill, originating from 2000 BC. Half of the 100-ton monolith is settled in the ground, while 3 smaller stones support the other half. But was it originally built like this? The fortress church on the Rock of Cashel is the nicest, most romantic monument in Romanesque style in the country. It's also called Ireland's Acropolis. Many tourists climb on the cliff emerging from the Tipperary plain during the night to sit in the moonlight under one of the Celtic crucifixes and breathe in the air of the distant past. The Rock of Cashel is a special spectacle in daylight as well. The road to the cathedral goes through the building of the parson's choir. An exhibition of objects found in the surrounding area are on display there, and in the crypt a museum of stonework remains may be viewed. We can see the original St. Patrick crucifix here, and in the yard there's a weather-resistant version. The carved rafters of the ceiling are held by painted consoles representing angels. A 28-meter-high round tower stands on the cliff. In olden days, enemies approaching the plain were observed from here. Since the 5th century, Cashel has been the headquarters of not only the church, but also the secular powers. Here reigned the kings of Munster, who ruled all of South Ireland. The most famous king was Brian Boru, living in the 10th century, who defeated the unified army of the Vikings in 1014 at Clontarf. The visitors' center here, relating the history and culture of the environs, was named after him. The walls of the roofless cathedral hide secret corridors. At the entrance of the Cormac Chapel, a centaur aims his bow at a lion. The 16th century tombs of the northern nave are covered with surprisingly modern stylized ornaments. The tomb of Mylor McGrath, who unprecedentedly was both Catholic and Protestant archbishop at the same time, is in the choir. In the graveyard, landowners and members of richer families and church members are buried. The exact location of the common grave of 3,000 people whom Cromwell's soldiers massacred in 1647 is still unknown. By all means, the memory of the victims of the bloody siege further heightens the mystery of the place. Visitors to this medieval monastery can't help but think of Ken Follett's novel, Cathedral. From the small plateau in front of the dormitory, there's a brilliant view of the lowland of the Golden Valley and of the verdant hills. The town of Killarney and the surrounding national park with the region of lakes lies along the Ring of Kerry. The hills and the coast lined with houses with old thatched roofs can be seen either by bus or car within a day. Who's able to devote a bit more time can rent a horse carriage. In Killarney and at Muckross Castle, dozens of coachmen offer their equipages fully furnished. They also take care of lunch, and according to individual wishes, they stop anywhere for a short picnic. The environs were a favorite place of two very different famous personalities as well. Charlie Chaplin liked to spend his holidays here. As did French President General Charles de Gaulle. The panorama of the lake region also enchanted Queen Victoria's ladies-in-waiting. The lookout is still called Ladies' View. 3 lakes meet here, the Upper Lake, Muckross Lake, and the Loch Lean. The last is spiced with small, uninhabited islands. There are some monuments in the area, a castle, and a monastery, but nature plays the main role. Until today, the landscape has inspired several painters and has been equally popular among writers as well. Perhaps Thackeray wrote about it in the nicest way. The meeting of the 3 lakes and Torque Waterfall is extremely picturesque. Here the Owen Gareth River reaches a depth of 18 meters. The canyon of the Gap of Dunlow is popular among hikers, while the national park is a paradise for sportsmen. Its territory can be visited either on foot, by mountain bike, or on horseback, but there are also possibilities for rafting and gliding. Those who prefer less extreme sports can find golf courses nearby and pleasure boats on the lakes. And we can have a rest anywhere in the environs in a quaint rural pub. When visiting Ireland's romantic countryside, there's no reason to be surprised how receptive people here are to tales and legends. Everyone knows the story about leprechauns having hidden their gold in a pot at the end of the rainbow. You can catch sight of them, but if you turn away even once, they disappear, and you can only find them under another rainbow. The Irish world of legends originates somewhere in Viking sagas and Celtic myths. Where rainfall is plentiful, so are rainbows, and we can hear the scuttling of small feet in the undergrowth of the forests. Fog is quite a frequent occurrence between the mountains, and the ruins of castles and abbeys also jumpstart our imagination. Irish tales are often republished in new selections and available in bookshops all over the world, and the red-bearded leprechauns wearing caps with shamrocks have also moved into the cinemas and souvenir shops. Not far from Killarney, on the shore of the lake with the same name, is Muckross Castle. The Victorian-aged mansion was built in 1843 in Elizabethan style. Its elegant rooms are furnished with period furniture. Its gardens are particularly nice during the summer when the azalea and the rhododendron are in flower. In the castle, we can see the local history exhibition of Southwest Ireland. In the park, a craftsman center and bio-farm are in operation. Whether we consider the number of sunny hours, the average quantity of rainfall, or the average temperature, statistics say that the best time to visit Ireland is in July. However, the weather is unreliable, and George Bernard Shaw's saying, which is constantly repeated in England and Scotland, is also true here. If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. Actually, between April and September, any of the months is suitable for making tours and doing sightseeing, but don't forget a light sweater or your umbrella at home. St. Patrick's Day is the beginning of the tourist season in the middle of March. In April, a classical music festival is held in Dublin, and in Tralee and Kerry, the Celtic Cultural Festival is held. At the end of May, in Ennis, people dance to Irish music for 4 days. In June, garden parties are held in such enormous gardens as, for instance, Powerscourt. On the 16th is the famous Bloomsday, when Joyce's novel entitled Ulysses is celebrated with walks and pub performances. Irish music festivals are held in several towns, mostly combined with beauty pageants. The highlight of July is the Stradbally steamer competition, and at this time, the regatta is held in Cork, and the horse show in Dublin, which is more than just a horse race. The oyster dominates September, and at this time, the hockey finals and the traditional Galway horse fair are held. Opera and jazz theater festivals try to make us forget that the summer has passed. The winter months bring salmon and trout fishing, and the Christmas and New Year's holidays. The ruins of Ross Castle stand on the peninsula expanding into Loch Lean. It was built in 1420. In 1653, Cromwell's Ironsides occupied and ruined it. Today, only its former residential tower is standing. While in Scotland, only monasteries and fortresses along the border were victims of the storm of history, in Ireland, the ruins of many castles, mansions, and churches may be found. Already during the wars of the English-Norman ages, many fortifications were partially demolished. The forthcoming times brought even larger destruction. When Henry VIII broke relations with the Catholic Church and dissolved the monasteries, he faced the Irish clan's resistance. It took 150 bloody years until the Stuart and Tudor houses managed to strengthen the Protestant ruling. Oliver Cromwell's armies left a trail of destruction all over the island. Only the Georgian age, the 1700s, brought relative peace and upswing. This was also the start of the age of the conscious protection of monuments. Several ruined churches and castles were restored, or at least preserved during this time. In Ireland, all kinds of betting are extremely popular, not only the lottery, but many other ways of gambling. Horse racing is popular in several European countries, but here, greyhound races have the biggest group of fans. In the evenings, most pubs feature live music. Limerick, which lies along the Shannon River, is the third largest city of the country. Limerick had its golden age during Norman times. After the Battle of Boyne, King James first took refuge here before he left the country. Although Limerick is primarily an industrial settlement, it has some very nice sights. In its downtown area, we can admire majestic Georgian houses and colorful gates similar to the ones in Dublin. The greatest attraction of the town is the impressive King John's Castle. Around 1200, shortly after the Normans had arrived, King John had the fortress built, consisting of rounded towers and massive walls. The local historical exhibition shows the history of the town and the Limerick siege. The Treaty Stone, also called the Stone of English Untrustworthiness, stands on the other side of the Thomond Bridge connecting to the castle. The English violation of the treaty is yet today a painful wound in this Catholic, patriotic town. The Hunt Museum is the biggest archaeological collection of the country, and the Limerick Museum shows the history and traditions of the city and its environs. The St. Mary Cathedral, originating from 1127, is famous for its carved angels. The west door is probably original, but other parts are from the 1600s. Bunratty Castle is one of the most visited places of Ireland. The Thomond Counts, the O'Brien family, lived here for 124 years beginning in 1500. The building looks frightening from outside, but is friendly inside. Its inner places are wider than we would think. It has beautiful, mainly original furniture. The interior today is the same as it was when the last O'Brien died in 1624. The castle was inhabited until the 19th century and was fairly run down due to that. Lord Gort bought it and had it restored to its original state. He established a museum and arranged medieval feasts in the hall that formerly served as the dining room of the guards. This custom is still alive. We can also pay for a genuine 17th century meal where dinner is accompanied by the lilting tunes of lute players. In the Great Hall, evening parties and balls have been held. Today, Lord Gort's antique collection is exhibited there. The bedrooms and guest rooms are connected by spiral staircases. The servants' accommodation was placed near the spiral staircases to allow them to respond to their master's beck and call at the drop of a hat. Among the rooms, we can also find a small home chapel. It was an unusual solution for the relatively small kitchen to be situated on 2 floors. The lower was the larder and place of preparation. For instance, wild animals which had been shot were processed here. The upper floor was the actual kitchen with a huge wood-burning stove. The counts donned their splendid clothes in the dressing rooms before receiving great audiences or hosting evening parties. In the Middle Ages, the upper rooms were called solar. Above these were only the lacy parapet terraces of the towers. If today we stand on any of these terraces, we can have an overview of the outdoor museum lying at the foot of the castle. Due to the building of the nearby Shannon Airport, several old buildings had to be removed. These were taken apart and reassembled again in the open-air museum called Bunratty Folk Park. This is how it began. In the meantime, an entire village has grown out of the ground with farmhouses, cobblestone streets, old grocery, small post office, and school. In the yard of the farmhouses, peat is drying, hens are pecking in the chicken yard, vegetable and herbs are growing in the kitchen garden. The interiors of the houses are also furnished. The arrangement is similar to other European farmhouses. In the middle, we enter the smoky kitchen, which was also the scene for daily life. To one direction opened the bedroom, and to the other the so-called clean room, which was used on holidays and if visitors arrived. The lavatory could be reached through the yard. Of course, there was no bathroom. Always several farm buildings belonged to the farmhouses: a pantry, hayloft, granary, smokehouse, stable, and coach house. In the more urban part of the park, we can see a potter's workshop, a functioning bakery, a pharmacy, a pleasant little tea house, a mill, and an elegant Georgian mansion. The furniture here is also original, and the interiors of the poor countrymen's houses and the well-to-do city buildings can easily be compared. The authenticity is increased by the old fire plugs and wells on the streets, the red mailboxes, and the bicycles propped against the walls. In summer, people dress in the traditional clothes of old professions, from making ceramics through weaving to butter churning. Galway was an important trading centre in the English Norman ages, but after the Boyne Battle, it went into a decline. The nicest 16th century building of Galway is Lynch Castle. This was the house of the family whose name is connected to the word lynching. In the downtown, on a bench, the statues of Oscar Wilde and his brother, archaeologist and biographer Sir William Robert Wilde, are sitting. Galway today is a university town, and here it's especially conspicuous that more than half of its Irish inhabitants are under 30 years old. The town lies on the bank of the Corrib River. Its winding street structure is a medieval heritage. On the plain, stony riverbank of Galway, the formerly closed Claddaghan fisher community lived. The Claddag ring reminds us of them, the ring passed down from mother to daughter, and the manner in which it was worn informed young men if they could get their hopes up concerning the girl in question. The Cliffs of Moher give us an unforgettable view. The steep cliffs that consist of sandstone and clay slate layers tower 200 meters above the ocean, and tens of thousands of seabirds build nests on the cliff walls here. In the middle of this natural wonder of 8 kilometers in length, a visitors' center has been built to the east of Liscannort. From here, both the new lookout tower, Hag's Cape, and O'Brien's Tower can be easily approached. The name of the Burren limestone plateau originates from the Gaelic rocky ground. It's a special region where the water creates huge underground caves by seeping in through the cracks of the limestone. Although there is some water on the surface, the shallow lakes dry out during the summer. The erosion has formed huge limestone logs which are not covered by ground, and plants live in the cracks. The unusual winter weather here also contributes to the existence of such unique flora, since in winter it's warmer in the mountains than in the valleys. Alpine and Mediterranean shrubs, bushes, and flowers live next to each other. Spring gentian, hawthorn, mountain dermander, cistus, bloody geranium, holly are only some of the plants native here. Like the plants, people also fight against the unkind circumstances, the strong wind blowing from the ocean, and the lack of water. They cultivate their small plots of lands with hard work, setting their sheep out to graze and watching the endless ocean from their small stone houses. In spite of all difficulties, the Irish like to live here, and they're convinced that there's no nicer place in the world than their Emerald Island.